Is Mephiles the Dark a good Sonic villain? Well, there's certainly a lot to go over when asking a question like that, so how about I break it into sections, and talk about why Mephiles may or may not be a good Sonic villain. I'm gonna go over his impact on the characters and story, his villainous acts and how well he works as an antagonist in the story, and finally, his design and aesthetics, cause we all know that drip is what separates good villains from the bad ones. Now these won't determine a full-on 100% confirmation of whether or not Mephiles was an objectively good or bad villain, because I'm going to be interjecting my own opinions in here sometimes, but that's just to say that however you feel about Mephiles may not be exactly the same way I feel about him, which is why you should leave your own thoughts on him down below if you'd like. But with all that said, let's get onto his impact on the characters and story. Mephiles is a character that has great potential, and right off the bat, I do think that Sonic 06 utilized his intrinsic darkness pretty well. Mephiles' creation was an accident. He was supposed to be the brain of Solaris, Soliana's sun god, and also just a god of time. So being the smarter half of a literal incomplete deity immediately makes him a powerful threat, one that linked himself to the darkness from the instant he was created. So his malice was there from the start. Shadow probably didn't make that aspect of him any better by sealing him within the Scepter of Darkness, but that act did at least help to delay Mephiles' plans of merging with Iblis to become Solaris. Both because he was trapped in the Scepter, but also because once he wasn't, his first goal was to get revenge on Shadow. And that right there is an immediate point in Mephiles' favor. Now, wanting revenge on a character isn't exactly the most complicated way of making a villain, but that's only part of the reason why he's a villain at all. In fact, I think that part of him makes him better than if he was just a fully evil embodiment of darkness, because it shows that he isn't truly an all-powerful god if he's trying to enact plans of revenge against others. He isn't just an evil villain for the sake of being evil. Well, I guess he technically is, but there have been way too many Sonic villains that are either mindless entities of destruction, or are so poorly written that they don't even have a good reason for existing. And while the mindless entities of destruction can be done very well, they're very easy to also just mess up, and usually having a villain with an actual personality works a lot better for most stories. I love Sonic Unleashed, as most of you know, but if I had to pick a single weak point in the story, it's that Dark Gaia doesn't really do much beyond spreading its corruption throughout the world, which yes, allows for some good exploration of the game's characters, but Chip, despite being the light half of the Gaias, is an actual character who interacts with people. Anyways, getting sidetracked. Back to what that means for Mephiles though, it's that he isn't just a mindless monster. He's a character who is dangerously manipulative towards people like Silver, and attempts to do the same to Shadow a few times. He leaves his impact on the characters by getting them to do exactly what he wants, in the case of Silver, and with Shadow, we can see how his plans of revenge fall apart due to just how well written Shadow is in this game. Seriously, almost all of Mephiles' character hinges on Shadow, and having Shadow be the firmly planted, making my own destiny, I'll fight like I always have character this time around, plays off of Mephiles' manipulative tactics so well. I'd say the best parts of Mephiles in general come from his moments with Shadow. Wow, big shock. But it was really great to see a villain who challenged Shadow's decisions, since we really haven't gotten anything like that since then. Shadow's character was written surprisingly well in Sonic Prime, but that wasn't because he was being challenged by opposing ideals, or made to think about his actions by any villains. It was just because it actually felt like he cared about others for once, after a long line of edgy loner Shadow. Mephiles does act against Shadow in ways that make him think about his actions and the future. Not necessarily in a way that breaks his character, but more in a way that reaffirms it, which is the most perfect way to portray Shadow. Mephiles literally steals Shadow's look from the very beginning. It's obvious that he was made to oppose Shadow, and that is done near perfectly. Plus, like I said, we get this banger of a line because of it.
If the world chooses to become my enemy, I will fight like I always have.
As for some of the other characters, Silver gets a pretty good dose of Mephiles' manipulation, which actually showcases that he can indeed be a threat, and that very much helps to further Silver's character too. He begins to question Mephiles and why he's even helping him to begin with, and after a while, he comes to the realization that blindly following what he says isn't the best idea. He too should determine his own future, much like Shadow. I guess Mephiles is just really good at making people realize that. Sonic doesn't interact with Mephiles hardly at all. He dies by his hands, but that's really about it. Other than the characters themselves, his ultimate goal is fusing with Iblis to create Solaris. Something that does end up happening, and he does it right after losing his battle with Shadow, the one thing he couldn't do. So to make himself feel better, he decides to destroy everything and wipe out all of existence, leaving only a few remnants of time left, which house the Chaos Emeralds. He succeeds in his plan of becoming Solaris, something that we don't always get to see from Sonic villains. He truly left an impact on characters like Shadow and Silver, and also on the whole story, since his victory in the end was only stopped by the revival of Sonic, the one hedgehog he actually did kill. Mephiles also did quite a few evil things throughout the story of Sonic 06, such as trying to make Silver kill Sonic, trying to get Shadow to turn on humanity, trying to get Omega to turn on Shadow, killing Sonic, and most importantly, destroying the entire universe. Mephiles isn't just a villain who's all talk. Like I said, it's not every day that we get to see villains actually succeed in their plans in Sonic games. Sure, the situations usually become pretty dire, and in most cases the end of the world is on the line, but Mephiles actually made it happen. The last stage is literally called the end of the world. He's also the only one who has managed to kill Sonic, extremely easily I might add, so Mephiles may just be the single most threatening villain in the whole series. Don't get me wrong, I love Dr. Eggman as a villain, but he's also never killed Sonic before. He also embodies the darkness perfectly when interacting with Silver, being a perfectly manipulative being who only wants to spread chaos for the fun of it. He's so evil that he intentionally delayed his plans to end the universe because of a petty grudge he had against Shadow. Mephiles is willing and able to throw the whole timeline into disarray because he has a very convoluted plan of releasing Iblis. He goes to such extreme lengths because he spreads chaos and destruction as the dark half of a failed experiment that was trying to create a god. Iblis may be called the Flames of Disaster, but the true mastermind behind everything to do with Solaris is Mephiles. He's in control at the end, which is why he wipes out everything until there's nothing left. He does it because he likes it, and because he can. And of course, he also looks pretty good while doing it. Yeah, on to my final point, his design. I already talked about how him taking Shadow's form at the very beginning works really well as someone who opposes Shadow, while also trying to be the one to control him. And I know 06's development was very rushed, hence why the game is why it is, but Mephiles looks creepy because of his resemblance towards Shadow. The lack of a mouth also probably helps that though, same with the no nose in his second form. So while I think he could maybe look a bit better in his second form, I do really think a nose would help, his aura more than makes up for it. There's also his theme, which works really well to enhance his creepy factor, but also embodies his story as a character, dancing around timelines and other characters like the keys on the piano do in his theme, but in a small and almost obscure way, eventually swelling into a more grandiose theme, which is when he's able to fulfill his final plan. But then at the end of it, his theme still gets overpowered by the heroes. It's just really good. I like it, okay? Mephiles works as a villain because of his manipulative, creepy personality. He wants destruction, but he's not afraid to go out of his way for revenge against others before doing so. He wants to break the spirits of all those he meets by getting them to attack others or break their promises, all while still having his victory in the end. For as cocky as he was, and as convoluted as his plans were, neither of those really led to his downfall. In the end, it was simply just a battle of strength that he lost against Sonic, Shadow, and Silver. He achieved his goal of destruction, while also losing a battle of will against Shadow before doing so. His actions were purely evil. Nothing he did benefited anyone else but him, which made him an interesting villain to see. An irredeemable dark deity, half of a time god, one that I think was a good villain. So yes, I think Mephiles is a good Sonic villain. Could there have been things done better? Absolutely. I think some plot holes here and there could have been avoided, but also 06 as a whole has many problems to address, including most of its story, but I don't think that should take away from what we did get of Mephiles in the end. A genuine threat, one who manipulated everyone around him just because he wanted to, one who challenged Shadow and tried to break his promise, one who killed Sonic. There hasn't really been a villain like him ever since, but maybe, just maybe, there might be some hope for his return. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on Mephiles, and if you did, feel free to hit the like button, and maybe even click subscribe if you'd like to as well. It really helps out my channel. I do want to hear your thoughts on Mephiles down in the comments too. Do you like him? Hate him? Let me know. I'm interested to see how others might feel about him. But anyways, with all that said, I'll see you next time.